What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to discuss free hit for game week 38. So I've put a draft together of what I would go for if I was using the chip this week, but I've also discussed plenty of alternative options as well. So even if you're just looking for a final day punt, this video could be pretty helpful for you. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the defensive options first of all. Now, in goal, I've gone for Davern Raya for Arsenal against Everton at home. And I think unless you're looking to go for double Arsenal attack, which is more than viable on a free hit in game week 38, it's just not something I've done with this draft, then he's the obvious goalkeeper to pick because you get to cover the best defence in the league without having to take up one of the defender slots. So Raya would definitely be in for me. I've also gone for Ben White because, again, if you're not doubling up on the attack, you might as well double up on the best defence in the league. If you wanted to pick Saliba or Gabriel instead, perfectly fine, right? All three of them are good options. I think Saliba is the lowest owned of the three. Gabriel is the highest. So Ben White is kind of in the middle of the two. And I think White and Gabriel are also more attacking than Saliba. It's not to say that Saliba can't get a goal from a set piece, because obviously he can. We've seen it already this season. But I think White and Gabriel are a bit more attacking. So I just see Ben White as the option in the middle. Right, he's lower owned than Gabriel, but a bit more attacking than Saliba. That's why I've gone for him. If you wanted to pick either of the other two instead, that also works. It's worth saying that if they get a clean sheet, but none of them get attacking returns, Saliba's probably the better for the bonus, as we saw last week or in the first game of game week 37. But honestly, pick one of the three, right? They're all decent. I've gone for Ben White. I think if you're on free hit this week, you almost have to pick Trent Alexander-Arnold, because a lot of the team you're going to go for, well, it depends how you want to set up, right? But a lot of the team that I've chosen are players that are already in a lot of people's squads left over from game week 37. Trent is not one of those players, and I don't think many people can get to him easily without taking hits. Or if they do go for him, they've probably got to give up someone like Salah instead. Whereas on a free hit, you can do all of those things because obviously it's just 1 week only. So Trent is clearly the best attacking defender from Liverpool. It's a good fixture, Wolves at home. Last game for Klopp as well. I don't think that necessarily makes it more likely they're going to get a clean sheet, but it is possible. And so I would just find the money to fit him in. He is expensive, and if you're going for Salah and Haaland, the money does get tight. I've got 0 in the bank with this draft, and my team value is not too bad. So some of you might not be able to afford this draft. If you can get Trent, he would definitely be in for you. I don't see any issues with starts or anything like that. Like, he might get subbed off at some point, but I think he gets past 60 minutes quite easily. And then I've gone for Vardy. Do I even need to explain that choice? For anyone that doesn't own him like me, it's been an absolute nightmare. His attacking returns recently have just been a joke. It's starting to take the mick how many he's got. I know he's playing in this advanced position almost like a left winger, right? I'm not saying it's been extremely lucky that he's got any returns, but oh my, I just wish they would stop, right? But that's probably a discussion for another video. So since game week 33, he's had 4 goals and 2 assists. So 6 attacking returns in 5 games. You'll probably get another one against Spurs tonight as well. And then you've got West Ham at home, which is just a really good fixture, right? There's every chance of a clean sheet. He's going to start that game unless he gets injured tonight. I just don't see why that wouldn't happen. And obviously you've got the attacking potential on top. The only defender really that I would consider ahead of any of these three, other than obviously just picking a different defender from the same team, right? So like Gabriel, Saliba, etc., is Pedro Porro, because Sheffield United away is a pretty decent fixture. But Spurs don't really, even in an away game like that, they don't give you a huge amount of confidence in a clean sheet. So you're really relying on the attacking returns. And White, Trent and Vardy can all get those attacking returns as well. But I think they're much more likely to keep a clean sheet this week. I do have Van der Ven on the bench for budget reasons. If I could afford to go for Porro on the bench, I would choose him instead. But in terms of getting in the first 11 ahead of the 3 I've picked, I probably wouldn't do it. But if you wanted to, there's no issue with it, right? I've got Porro in my actual team this week, and I'm more than happy with it. My other defender on the bench is Doughty, Fulham at home. Pretty good fixture. He's fairly attacking as well. I don't think there really is too many other kind of great defensive options this week. Like even like someone like Reguilon for Brentford who can be attacking. Like, it's Newcastle at home. I don't necessarily see Brentford getting a clean sheet. Brighton versus Man United, both teams will probably score. I wouldn't back well, maybe I would back the Nottingham Forest defence against Burnley, but it's an away game. If that was at home, maybe you'd look at someone from Forest, because their defensive numbers have been very good this season. But I don't think I would go there. Like Chelsea defenders, if Reece James, right, if you're watching deadline streams or you're just around at the deadline and Reece James is confirmed to be starting, I'd be super tempted to take that risk. He's a massive differential. We know how attacking he can be when he plays, and I appreciate he's never fit, but as a 1 week only punt, that is what the free hit is made for. And if I knew Reece James was starting and I was free hitting, I would get Ben White out of that team straight away and James would be in instead. Is there a chance that he comes off before 60 because of his injury record? Absolutely. But honestly, he's the one other defender I'd get pretty excited about, to be honest. Palace and Villa wouldn't be interested in that game. Luton, obviously, I've covered, and then Spurs too. So that is about it for me. I think Raya in goal, Ben White, Trent, and Vardiol looks good. You could absolutely consider Porro as well. I guess you could play Doughty off the bench instead if you wanted to, but he's not better than any of the defenders I've selected. But Reece James is the one. If you know he's starting in Game Week 38, I'd be super tempted by that because his ownership is going to be pretty much zero at this point. Obviously, wait until tomorrow's games, right, because Chelsea are playing. He may get injured in that, but just keep an eye on that one. So for this draft, I've gone for a 3-5-2 formation. There's not a huge amount of forwards to get excited about, as I'll talk about in a minute. So I would definitely choose 5 midfielders this week. A couple of picks you're going to see in a lot of people's teams who aren't free hitting. So that is Cole Palmer. Really difficult to leave him out because you know he's going to start that game. His stats are ridiculous this year. He's on penalties too. Bournemouth at home is a good fixture. And also, again, if you're trying to fit in Haaland, Salah and Trent, money gets quite tight. And most people already own Palmer and have done for quite a while. So there's a lot of value in him. I just wouldn't see you going for anyone else instead. Even if you were buying Cole Palmer new, he's 6.3 million. It's still an extremely good price. So he would definitely be in. I know Son hasn't exactly lit up the FPL world recently, but it doesn't get much better than Sheffield United away. Even if Spurs lose to Man City tonight, obviously that's their Champions League hopes pretty much. I think it might actually be over. I'm just going to double check now. I can't remember the permutations. If Spurs lose tonight, they will be 4 points, 5 points behind even. So it'll be absolutely done, right? Villa will be confirmed in the Champions League. But I just don't. Obviously, we've not seen Postecoglou in the Premier League before, but I just don't see him mass rotating players. I think he'd want to go out and just win that game with his normal kind of first 11. So I'm pretty sure Son's going to start either way, no matter what happens against Man City. And he's really one of the only attackers in that team you can be absolutely sure of a start. He's on penalties, good minutes, all that stuff we talked about lots before. So Palmer and Son are going to be in a lot of non-free hit 38 teams, but I still think they're good picks. And then the other 3 I've gone for are Havertz, Salah, and Johnson. Salah for me is just like Trent. I don't see how you can free hit without him. His ownership is so low compared to what we know he can do. And he hasn't necessarily looked great since kind of Game Week 30 when he was back in the Liverpool team and starting most games. But I do think he's going to start against Wolves. His minutes are going to be good. He will obviously be on penalties as well. It's the last game for Klopp at Anfield. You can write whatever narrative you want, right? But I think they're going to be going for it. And I just don't see how they don't get a few goals against Wolves. And if they do, you would hope that Salah would be involved. Obviously, they scored 3 last night and he didn't score in that game. But I just think he's one of the biggest differentials this week. His ownership will go up. I've said that already on the stream on Sunday. But it's not going to go up to a point where he's like 80, 90% owned. So he's a huge differential. I would definitely have him if I was free hitting this week. Then I've gone for Brennan Johnson, who's in my actual team, but he is super low owned. And I think with the injuries that Spurs have got to Havertz and Werner, there's every chance he will start again. Look, we might see some rotation from Postecoglou, but I just don't think we will. Not enough where Son and Johnson wouldn't play. So again, he would be in mostly for budget reasons, by the way. Like if you wanted to go for Foden or Saka instead of Johnson, right, and you wanted to get rid of one of your defensive Arsenal players, you could absolutely do that. But there's a massive difference in price. Brennan Johnson will only cost you 5.8 million, and his stats over this season have been really good. Like per 90, his expected goals 0.4 and expected assist 0.16. That's pretty good for a player of that price. He should have got more returns against Burnley already in Game Week 37 as well. I just think he's a really nice option for 38. And then I've gone for Havertz, basically because I had no money left over to get Saka. And I'd already gone pretty cheap on the bench as it is. I could maybe get rid of Doughty and Van de Ven to even cheaper defenders, but I still don't think it would give me enough money to go for Saka over Havertz. I do think in isolation comparing the two, just because of Saka on penalties, he's still the better option. But in a one-game week shootout, essentially, where Havertz is playing number 9, and I think he's pretty much played, I'm just going to double check, I think he's pretty much played 90 minutes basically every game recently. I could be wrong on this. Let me just find him here. Yeah, he's played 90 of the last 3. In fact, he's played 90 minutes in 5 of the last 6. It was only the Chelsea game where he came off in the 71st minute, but obviously they were absolutely cruising in that game. And Havertz is even lower owned than Saka. Both of them are pretty good differentials this week. Their ownership will definitely go up quite a lot in 38 because I think people will be looking for Arsenal or Liverpool attackers, and Havertz and Saka are probably better than Diaz, and so people can get to them in one move, whereas with Salah it's a little bit trickier. But still, it's not going to suddenly grow to a point where you're kind of worried about it. So I would go for an Arsenal attacker, I think. If you can afford Saka, great. If not, Havertz. The one player I've kind of left out here is Phil Foden. And again, you could select him if you wanted to. I think he's a great option. I've got him in my own team. I'm very happy to have him for 38. I just don't know which of these players I would drop. Again, you could get rid of Johnson or Palmer if you wanted to, but the price difference is quite a lot. Foden is more expensive than Havertz. I think Salah is the better option between the two of him and Foden. So then it's Son. You could drop Son for Foden if you wanted to, but honestly, I'd probably just prefer that midfield and just hope that Man City don't absolutely smash West Ham, which they absolutely could, by the way. And obviously, De Bruyne is another option that you could choose from instead. This is why I would absolutely be on a 3-5-2. There are just too many midfielders to warrant going 3-4-3. And I'm having to leave out loads, right? I think that midfield looks pretty great, but there's so many players I don't own. So Foden, De Bruyne, Madueke as a punt against Bournemouth at home could be an option as well. I think Crystal Palace, look, Villa at home is not an easy game, but Palace are playing so well right now. We saw the Villa defence, concede 3 to Liverpool. Palace attack might not be quite as good as Liverpool, but it's been very good recently, especially when Elise and Eze are fit. So Elise and Eze themselves are both really nice differential options. I guess it really depends on how much you want to push it this week and how much you're looking to climb up the ranks. Because I go back to the midfield I've selected, like Son and Palmer ownership is massive, but Havertz, Salah and Johnson aren't that bad. So you could go against Palmer and Son and not go for Foden because his ownership's massive as well, and just go for Crystal Palace midfielders instead. I think Eze and Elise is quite close, to be honest, in terms of who's the best option. Eze's probably on penalties, but Elise's underlying numbers this year have been incredible when he's actually played. So I don't know, maybe it would come down to budget. I think either's good. Just flip a coin. Any other midfielders that I missed? I mean, James Maddison against Sheffield United away. He started against Burnley. I'm sure he's going to start against City as well. I would be surprised if he misses out against Sheffield United, but I'm not sure he's a better option than Son or Johnson. But again, if you're looking for a differential, you could go for him. Gross against Man United, possibly. In Burmo against Newcastle at home. But I think the main ones that I haven't selected, which you could definitely consider, are Eze, Elise, Foden, De Bruyne, and maybe Madueke, I guess, against Bournemouth at home too. And then up front, I've got Nicholas Jackson against Bournemouth at home, Erling Haaland against West Ham at home, and Muniz for Fulham against Luton away on the bench. And I didn't realise just how cheap Muniz was. Like, I knew he was under 5 million, but a lot of people bought him around kind of game weeks 27, 28, 29. And I guess since then they've probably sold him, right? But he's only 4.3 million. And I know he hasn't done great recently, but he's still got a goal against Palace in 35, an assist against Liverpool in 34. His minutes have come down a little bit in the last couple of games. Brentford away, City at home. I wouldn't worry about it too much. He should start against Luton. It's a good fixture. And honestly, he's on the bench anyway. Most of the players you're going to pick are going to start. But he's a really good budget option. Originally, I was going to pick Chris Wood instead against Burnley away for the bench. In the end, money got in the way, so I had to go for Muniz instead. Haaland is an obvious choice. I think even if you're looking to go mega differential this week, I'm not sure you can leave out Haaland. There's just too much damage that he could do to you while you're trying to climb up the ranks, especially in that fixture, especially when they need a win, no matter what happens against Spurs. Even if Man City obviously win, the title race is still open in game week 38, and West Ham at home is such a good fixture. I would just be too worried about what Haaland could do. Even if you decide not to captain him, I would still have him in the team. And like I've already said, there's not a huge amount of standout forwards. So I've gone for Jackson, who's obviously played well recently. with a good fixture. You could look to keep Isak if you wanted to against Brentford Brentford away. But again, budget comes into it, and he's more expensive than Jackson. You're not going to go for an Arsenal forward or an Everton one against that Arsenal defence. Ivan Toney just hasn't scored at all recently. I can't even... Let me have a quick look here. He obviously came back and did really well in the first kind of 4 or 5 games, and then he was out for a little while. Yeah, he hasn't scored in any of the last 3. He's played 90 minutes. He got an assist against Man United in game week 30. He hasn't scored since game week 25 against Liverpool. You know, it was a blank against City, West Ham, Chelsea, Arsenal. Fair enough, right? They're tough fixtures, but he also blanked against Burnley, Everton, Fulham, and Bournemouth. So, you know, again, if you wanted to go for a last day punt on him, I don't hate it, but I don't know, it's not looking great right now. João Pedro is another really cheap option that I like as long as he's fit. That would be a little bit of a worry, but he gets to play the Man United defence. So that is potentially nice. He'd be on penalties as well. Chris Wood, who I already mentioned against Burnley away. I don't know how Chris Wood hasn't scored recently, to be honest with you. He's had so many good chances. He gets into really good positions. The goals are coming. Burnley's a really good fixture. You could even maybe play him ahead of Nicholas Jackson if you wanted to. I just wish that fixture was at home. If it was Forest against Burnley at home, I'd be a little bit more keen than away. But obviously Burnley are down and out, so you just never know what's going to happen in a game like that. Mateta against Villa at home. Obviously Watkins against Palace away. You could consider them. Cody Gakpo is getting minutes over Darwin at the moment. He's playing really well too. Wolves at home could be an option. I think he is 7 million. Let me just check there. 7.1. And I think that's about it. Adebayo against Fulham at home. I don't think many people are going to go there. So I think Haaland... I mean, I don't need to sit here and tell you why Haaland's good, right? He would be in. It's just about who you go for that second slot. Like, you could go 3-4-3, but out of the forwards I've mentioned, like, if I said to you, I don't know, you're going for Mateta instead of Havertz, I don't know, maybe. I mean, you could go for Mateta instead of Johnson if you wanted to, if you weren't sure about that pick or you were a little bit worried about rotation. But I just think his minutes look good with the injuries they've got. And obviously, midfielders, you get the extra point for the clean sheet and the goal as well. And for a one-game shootout, I think I'd be on the 3-5-2. So there's not too many players there that I would change who I think are like genuinely better this week. But there are a lot of differential options you could go for, mostly in midfield. But double Arsenal defence with Trent and Vardiol super attacking just looks great. Salah's a big differential this week. Havertz and Johnson as well. Son and Palmer are solid picks, but if you want to go against them, you can. Jackson... I'm not really, like most of these players I'm super happy with. Jackson's fine. It's just a case of not too many other better forwards for his price. And the fixture is good as well. And then the only player I haven't mentioned is the goalkeeper on the bench. It's Areola against Man City at home. I think he's the cheapest playing goalkeeper, basically. But Ray is going to start, so it doesn't really matter. So that's my free hit team. Let me know in the comments below what you would do differently. If you've enjoyed that video, give it a like, hit subscribe, rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. I skipped transfer tips today because ultimately there's no future planning at this point. You're only looking for players for 1 week only. There's going to be a lot of discussion around punt. So I thought I'd just leave that until the game week preview tomorrow. I'll do my team selection on Thursday after the rest of the game week 37 games are finished. And then final thoughts on normal as Friday. Maybe something on Saturday. Maybe we'll just leave that day. And obviously deadline stream will be on Sunday this week. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video, whether you're on free hit or not. And I will catch you again tomorrow.